I must start by thanking Sandy for that grounding. I much needed it. I think what we heard in the last panel really reaches out to each one of us deep within, and I strongly feel lived experiences are what should be guiding us. Today, of course, we are meeting and we are going to have a round of discussion on a very, very important topic. It made me wonder that if we have to have a separate panel which says listening to the youth, it definitely has an indication that this population is trying to say something very, very loudly to us. And possibly we've not heard it yet. Because what we are seeing in the outcomes, even with Dr. Jaya in the morning, the numbers that she put up in front of us, they've been there. They're a wake-up call for a long time. Somehow doesn't look like we've woken up, or that we are making our efforts in directions which need to be re-looked at. And also it says strengthening communities. I feel a very palpable energy in this room today which is saying, yes, there's a problem. Can we please very, very focused speak about what can we quickly do about it? Because the problem is very large. We are making changes at policy level. We are attempting to make changes at policy level, but we can't wait till all those changes happen. We have to start strengthening our communities, and the first step that we need to do is to listen. Ideally, we should have had someone young on this panel as well. We should have had a young voice sitting here today and telling us what they want to tell us. So I'm just giving you a brief idea because, as always, we have very learned experts over here. We have people who have lived through experiences over here, and there's so much that they're going to bring into this conversation and into this room. We also know, just setting the tone for the entire discussion that we're going to have, we all are aware that young people experience distress, but that distress is not in isolation. That distress is coming because their emotional worlds are shaped by relationships, by families, by institutions, and today by a digital ecosystem as well. And maybe we'll try and throw some light into how we can bring the digital ecosystem without losing real-life human connection. Suicide prevention is never the responsibility of one individual or one system. At its heart, it's a community responsibility built very strongly on connection, compassion, and the courage to listen. I've been working in the area of education for the last 25 years, and I see young girls every day. And I think our young people are trying to speak, maybe not in words, but in silences, in disruptions, and in creativity and in distress. And what they are trying to tell us, what I feel, is that they don't just need support, they need spaces where their voices shape this support. Today, our focus is simple yet profound. How do we listen better? How do we build communities that youth can lean on? And how do we ensure that every person feels heard? Of course, like you know, I think many of you already know Dr. Shekhar. He's been with us sharing his very valuable thoughts over the last 2 days. He's a leading expert in child and adolescent mental health, and his active work as of now, which he would have has stated he would like to share, is how he's building ecosystems and not just individual attempts to bring changes in higher education institutions. We also have with us Dr. Teena Augustine, and senior psychologist, crisis responder, and PFA trainer, who has strengthened suicide prevention programs and works deeply with women and family systems. Sachin, again, I've met Sachin before. Hi, Sachin. Sachin is a senior trainer and crisis intervention specialist with over 14 years of experience in suicide prevention, a helpline leader, and the president of Befrienders India. However, what stands out with Sachin is that he does a very difficult job of training thousands in compassionate inquiry, helping people to learn how to ask difficult questions with clarity and care. And of course, we have Lorraine, very own Lorraine from Connecting. who's a program lead at Connecting, driving youth-focused and community-based interventions. So I thought we could have this entire session if we could start from the granular and then move upward to institution, family, and then maybe experience of how the PEP program has gone. So Sachin, I would like to open up with you. In your work, I think you meet people at their most vulnerable. What cultural beliefs or interpersonal fears stop young people from reaching out even when they are struggling?
Thank you, Jaya. Now, a bit more. Okay. So I'm not used to having a microphone usually. Now, it's very difficult to kind of just objectively state these are the issues that students or younger people are going through. I would like to refer to some of my own conversations that I've had, right? Where I'll tell you of one particular incident where I was reached out by a young person. It was after a suicide gatekeeping training that I had done with the group, and one of them came up to me and said, "Sachin, it's quite difficult for us to not utilize, for example, drugs." Because we had spoken about addiction and as coping mechanism and how we are trying to deal with our life and the pain through life using coping mechanisms such as this. But the predominant belief that people tend to have is that it's drugs, it's just ayyashi, right? It's just people trying to have fun. But in this conversation, what the young student told me was, Sachin, but it works. I tried MDMA or some other drug he was talking about, and he said, "But Sachin, I tried that drug, and then you know what happened? I didn't sleep for 3 days." Right? I didn't sleep for 3 days. In fact, I didn't feel tired. I was able to pay attention to the notes. I was able to see myself engaging with the notes, and I was able to absorb what it is being taught. And my exam went well. Right? So, are you dealing with a drug problem or a medication problem? Because I don't think the new generation is seeing them as drugs, or it's not necessarily being seen as being cool. It's survival. So in these past 2 days, the conversations that we all heard through the esteemed speakers, I feel it had a huge relevance because when we are looking at the youth, we are looking at the youth. We are not with them. We are not hearing their side. And unfortunately, very often, yes, it's easy to just label Gen Zs and millennials and all of this and try to make a cohort of ourselves and judge the others. But I feel there's a very simple communication that is missing. Everyone is in pain. Everyone is doing their best to deal with it. And everyone feels like they need to pretend to be strong. So I would let that settle in terms of a simple case of addiction, or because there was a conversation on digital and how, because again, yesterday's conversation, everything we are trying to, as if we are trying to find something or someone to blame, right? That if only we deal with this particular thing, suicide's gonna go down. If only we start talking in this particular way, suicide's going to go down. But the issue is not at all at that level, I feel sometimes. I feel we are missing it out. I think you mentioned yesterday throwing the baby out with the bathwater because we want it to understand it objectively so much. But the stigma, the fear is so high that sometimes the answers are really in front of our face, but we fail to see it. I would like to know how many parents would have spoken to that child, like when they are sitting for 20 hours a day and studying. Is that humanly possible for anyone to sit for 20 hours and study? I mean, I don't know what that means, right? I can barely stare at the wall for 10 minutes, right? But you're staring at a book, but doesn't it become a wall after 1 hour? I don't know, because that's what it looks like. And if all of us, because I speak to parents as well, and their answer is, oh, we don't force him. No, and you know what? I believe them. They don't think they are forcing. And also, very, very often, they are not. But what is happening? What are the students seeing? All right, my father's working 14 hours. My mother's, if she's not working, because I'm trying to talk about the generic, what's the usual, the most that we have in India, right? And the mother is complaining about that father the whole day, and also removing their frustration on their child because the father is not coming home to get the ventilation done. So where does it go out? Where I have mothers telling me, मैं बच्चे को कूट रही हूँ. And it's said while they are crying. They see the pain that they are creating, right? But that conversation is something that is not happening. We are all trying to be strong for someone else. In this case, the parents are not putting pressure. I told my kids, fail hua to bhi chalega. No problem. You just do your best. Right? There's no pressure. You just do your best. What does that mean? What is best? Because my father looks like he's struggling even though he's spending 14 hours doing something that he doesn't seem to enjoy. He comes back home and is trying to zombie out by either looking at the phone or the television or something else. And so where do I have that space, right? So having a bigger conversation around this is important. And I think a bit more settled conversation around this is much more important. So I think I would like to start with that.
So Sachin, just taking that forward, like you said that, there seems to be that families feel that they are communicating, but young ones don't feel they are heard. What's the gap? And if there's a parent who comes up to us and says, I want to do something, but I'm unsure what to do, what would you, with your experience, be able to guide them with?
So again, I think the major disconnect is because we are all so intertwined in our own pain that we fail to see that someone else is in pain, right? As long as you smile, you're fine. So then that's the easiest thing to do. You just smile right now. So for parents, I mean, when we are I've had a conversation with a father whose son he hasn't spoken to in 2 years. They're living in the same house. They are not talking to each other. The son is always in the bedroom. The father doesn't want to have that conversation because he knows he will end up shouting at him. And the son is going to end up having a fight with him. But he's like, oh, he's just out of control. He's in the bathroom for over 4 hours, but when he comes out, his hands are bleeding because he was washing his hand with soap for so long that he's bleeding now, and he's always frustrated. He's giving bad words to his mother. If anything we don't do as per what he likes or anything like that, he just shouts and screams, and we have neighbors to be concerned about, and all of this is happening. I'm like, it sounds like your son and you both are going through a lot. I mean, have you considered any help? Like Ayurvedic doctor se leke bhoot bhagane wale aa gaye. I was like, what's stopping you? Have you thought of counseling or, maybe even a psychiatrist? At this point, it seems like your son may need some real help in this manner. And he's like, uska CA ka exam hone wala hai. Month end mein CA ka exam hai. Tab tak just chalne dete hain. Uske baad we can do something. Right? So there is always something that will come up which is more important. Something that feels a bit more urgent when compared to what the child or someone is going through. थोड़ा और चल जाएगा. एक और महीना तो चल ही जाएगा ना. Next day, I spoke to the father. He said, I bought him his PS5. I'm like, huh? We had such a long conversation. Such a long conversation. And his insight from that was, I bought him the PlayStation. I was like, what PlayStation? No, he had been fighting with us for PlayStation, and I was like, really? So through our conversation, the father had that emotional connect and he felt guilty. But he didn't utilize the guilt to actually take the next steps, right? His guilt was assuaged by, okay, he's been talking about PlayStation, and so I'm like, but he has a CA exam in 1 month. He's hyper focusing and doing all of these things. He's only in his room. He's not able to study, and now you are adding a PlayStation to the mix. I didn't know what to say, right? But I hope this kind of tells you where we are, because there are honest conversations, there are honest insights, but from insight to action, there's a very big gap. And that is with the beliefs, our own traumas. I feel like suicide is definitely something, there's a high level of stigma. But I think there is also the Western psychiatric asylum based understanding that we had developed, I think, in the 80s and 90s. I think where we kind of saw pagal khana, that if someone is dealing with, we are a country, or we are, as Southeast Asians, we are the ones who developed the Eastern style of compassion and inquiry and all of that. But then we kind of forgot about it. And now we are, like one of the observations one of the panelists had made, that we are more into trying to follow this 3-step procedure of behavioral modalities that we can just transplant onto our indigenous way of life, and somehow it's not working, so the challenge is to have these conversations, be open to, like, yes, you as a father, you want to speak to him. Nobody's asking you to be his best friend. In fact, don't, right? You are the father and you are the mother. That's one role nobody else in the world has. तो आपने उनको दोस्त बना दिया, तो वो फिर माँ बाप किधर और ढूंढेंगे? तो पहले आपने ये कॉन्वर्सेशन एज अ माँ बाप कैसे करनी है? I had to adopt a dog, and I had to go through 1 month of training to understand, what socialization is, and with dogs, and how it matters, and how things are different in every different scenario. I'm really hard pressed to consider, like, as parents, do we ever have such conversations, or do we ever go through such trainings, or understand socialization, or how to go about it? We don't have those conversations, because आप माँ बाप बन गए तो automatically आ जाता है. So we have very, very long way to go. But I think at a compassionate level, if we are able to look at that, even that father was going through a lot of pain. He was not deliberately not reaching out to his son. He was scared. He was scared of being punched. Let me be very clear. As simple as that. And what will that mean after that happens? I'm like, how do we move beyond that violence that I'm expecting will happen? So there's a deeper conversation. It's not just a very simple guide. No, they need hand-holding during these times. And I hope whoever is in touch with them are able to offer them that. And also be able to see that it's not parents versus children or any such thing. It's one person in pain trying to deal with another person in pain, and it's somehow not working.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that in, and also the nuances of what we understand as communication. I think for generations we have continued what we call as the culture of silences. Silences around difficult communications, and but of course there's movement. There's always hope. There are organizations that are trying to work through it. Dr. Teena, I would like to bring you in around the culture of silence, and you've done a lot of work with young women and also in palliative care. How can we listen to the pain that young women face through this culture of silence, and how can we encourage this listening in the community as well?
That's a wonderful question. Thank you. Before I begin, there was something somebody asked me to do when I come here. This is a self-harm survivor. The person asked me to say that self-harm is not inferior to suicide. And this person wanted me to say the same sentence. So I owe it to this person. I want to start with self-harm, because it's a word we don't use. We struggle to say suicide. So you can imagine, I want all of you to just say the word suicide and try to say the word self-harm in the same breath. And you might suddenly realize suicide feels a little superior. And this is how the person who spoke to me felt. The silence that you just brought up, I think it starts with birth. Because the moment you are born a woman, a child, a girl child, grateful that you're born a girl, because no matter how modern we are, what family, what segment of the society we belong to, me sitting here, I'm lucky because it's not something that was planned. It was not something that makes anybody proud. मैं अपने घर की चिराग तो नहीं हूँ, किसी और की अमानत है, and ये label is on my head right from day one. And I have to therefore perhaps suppress pain, suppress any sort of emotional torture that I go through, because I have a strong generation. All of us women have a strong generation of women on the other side who take no effort in reminding us they had it difficult than us. So silence comes natural to us. So my mother would always say, the day you become a mother, you would realize how painful things are. So I was super excited when my daughter turned 6. I thought, ab vasool hoga. I'll go and tell her, now I am a mother, ab kya? And I'm going to show a body language. My mother was on a walker. She was standing on a walker. And she just looked at me and said, 3 children, normal delivery. 1 child, C-section. I just took an about turn. And I realized, okay, I will never. Then she came around and said, you have an option to try, and try for normal delivery this time. Then we will have a conversation. Now, while this is funny, I have clients who have felt hurt. This constant need to receive this validation when all you're being told is to be silent, suffer pain. And I want to bring in something that I see with a lot of young women, something that everybody here would relate but will never speak. The reproductive cycle we have. Whisper has an ad of kids starting menstruation at the age 8, which means our young girls are going to go through this for 3 to 4 decades. But we are not allowed to talk about it. If I go to buy a sanitary napkin, or if I say I want an antacid or a painkiller, all of you will take it out and throw it at me. If I say I need a sanitary napkin, you might ask me to come to the back of this room and slip it in my hand. I don't know why. So when I was going to college, this thing was coded bread. Bread chahiye. The irony is, bread ka packet I can walk around, honestly. But a sanitary pad packet I can't. So every time I go to a medical store and I said, don't waste wrapping it in a paper, the man just stares at me as to how dare you walk out. That is silence. Everything about my body is silence. I don't know how many of us are aware of this condition called PMDD. I think we need a lot of awareness about that in India. And PM is a very bad word. Everything is PMSing. Girlfriend shouldn't PMS, wife shouldn't PMS, mother has menopause. Everything is silence. The moment I feel emotional, I'm shut. Everybody is shut because we have to feel guilty of PMSing. All the aggression is not because women PMS, and we don't multiply PMS every month, that people have to keep a track of when are we PMSing. But why did I bring up PMDD? I lost a dear friend. And this is years ago when I was doing my graduation. I wasn't familiar with the word PMDD. There was a lot of silence about what led to the death. There were a lot of rumors about affairs and issues. Eventually, we came to the conclusion that the person had extremely difficult periods. And every time this person brought this up to mother, aunt, some of the aunts were gynecologists too, all that was said, this is normal. Women go through this, don't make a big ruckus. It took a life for people to understand that there are women who feel it. And it is not a wrong thing to talk about wanting to end your life in a certain phase. And imagine we go through this for decades without medication, without painkillers, because we have to prove we can bear pain. So where do we start working? I think we need more spaces. I run a support group for PMDD, PMS, and I can tell you none of the women want to talk there. They're very scared because normalizing the pain and suffering might make them so angry for being silent so many years. They have to go back and fight for their rights, and they're not willing to do it. More spaces in schools and colleges, and not belittle anybody by saying, I never went through this pain. How the hell are you going through it? PCOS is not something I invited. Please don't blame everything on workout. The answer from every gynec shouldn't be go for jogs, do yoga. I'm a great fan of yoga, but you can't tell everybody yoga and change of lifestyle is responsible and the previous generations never had PCOS. A lot of awareness on perimenopause and menopause, because by the time a woman reaches the peak of her career, she's competing with a man who's devoid of perimenopause. Come on, that's not fair. That is not fair that a man doesn't have a uterus, therefore doesn't go through this. So when he climbs stairs and doesn't face hot flashes or aneurysms or hemorrhoids or I don't know what not that goes into the body, it's not easy. And we are expected to work. A different silence that Naruti spoke about, it's a topic that's very important. One question I ask is, why are so many mental health practitioners women? Immense patience, endless tolerance, we don't ask for support. We suffer as women, we suffer in the profession, and we are expected to put up with it because we are women. So I don't know, where are we not silenced? We are silenced everywhere. And crying about it makes us bad women who destroy family as institutions, who are responsible for the children that is growing out of control. So it's a lot of silence. And that silence is not something that is easy to handle. Something else I wanted to add about self-harm is, it's not a cry for attention. I have a problem with the word cry for attention because it gets labeled as an attention-seeking behavior. I often have asked call center trainers and volunteers, if you get a call of self-harm and a call of suicide, what would you prioritize? And you know the answer. Self-harm, they might manage and after some time get back to normal. How many self-harms have gone wrong? What do you classify it as? And if a person is constantly harming for years, what is the predisposition to end it once and for all? Because pain is not something I'm scared of. But you know something else? Death is not easy too. Because sometimes there is a sense of servitude. I don't have the luxury to die because I'm a woman. Because who will do the work? So I had somebody who came into me, lots of cuts. And the husband came and said, I told this person that she can't die because I have to go for a meeting tomorrow morning. Baki kaam kaun karega? And this person said, and that's exactly what keeps me alive, because if I die tonight, who's going to take care of my kids tomorrow? While suicide is a reality, self-harm is sometimes just a postponement till suicide. And we don't see that because these marks don't show up. They are on parts of the body that nobody can see. If I was, or any of these people are attention seekers, it would show up in body parts you want to see, not in parts of the body you don't want to see. I will just end with a small case study. So, taking out all the details, I had this young mother who carried a baby full term, and the baby died few hours after delivery. Naturally, everybody said, don't talk about death. It brings bad luck. Let's be positive and think about the baby you can have. This is one day after she lost the child. Husband said, and please don't talk about it because I'm also grieving as a father. I'll also feel bad. And this person just wanted to grieve this child. And this person is helpless, cannot talk about this loss. Eventually decided, before I forget this baby I had, let me just carve the name I planned for this child on my body, because I will be made to reproduce again. I will be made to forget I had this child. A feeling only a woman can understand, nobody else. Unfortunately, even the mothers there did not understand. They wanted this person to silence and move on. Many such stories of self-harm where you have to be silent and move on. And you have to show up living, strong, because that's what you're made for and that is what you are as a woman. I think we need spaces to change where a woman can at least grieve the child she bonded with for 9 months. A place where a woman doesn't have to mutilate to prevent coercive sex. or a woman doesn't have to cut up just because the mother says, "You stole my husband," though she is a victim of child abuse. We want spaces where women can be women, and that starts from the family.
Thank you, Dr. Teena, for bringing that in, and for talking about the silent burden that women are carrying through and plowing through and being strong. And like very rightly said, until we open up spaces and those spaces become accessible spaces, those spaces become safe enough for me to want to enter that space, I think that's where that's the only way forward for us to even make sense of the kind of systems that we are trying to put in place. Moving from that, Dr. Seshadri, with your extensive work in higher education institutions and building an ecosystem, could you, give us some insights about the gaps that you are repeatedly observing in colleges that are believing that they're doing enough, but are actually missing out on the everyday vulnerability of the students? And also, if it's possible to throw light on the aspect that Dr. Teena spoke about, gendered distress, and whether our mental health services in institutions and the ecosystems we are trying to believe has taken cognizance of this.
Jaya, I've done a bit of a rejig to what I want to say on the basis of some things that Sachin and Teena have said, but I will try to address it in the round of ideas and sentiments I wish to share. Borrowing shamelessly from feminist ideology, the personal is political. I would like to move from the personal to the political. In any ecosystem, the whole context of silences, and I'd like to quote from the language of silence, where Leslie Kane poetically elucidates some of the many meanings and functions that silence bears. This is for practitioners and even first responders to understand in a given interaction in an ecosystem. The dumb silence of apathy, the sober silence of solemnity, the fertile silence of awareness, the active silence of perception, the baffled silence of confusion, the uneasy silence of impasse, the muzzled silence of outrage, the expectant silence of waiting, the reproachful silence of censure, the tacit silence of approval, the vituperative silence of menace, the peaceful silence of communion, and the irrevocable silence of death. Now, if you move from there, then to an ecosystem, and here is an example of a 40-year-old who comes back to school to meet his teacher who's on the verge of retirement and says, "Teacher, do you remember me?" And then the teacher says, he was a cherubic looking boy. Now he has wavy long hair with a beard and, says, "But teacher, I have not forgotten you. I don't know whether you recall. I come from a terrible family situation, and truth be told, I have not reconciled with my family. I managed to wade my way through academia, did computer science, and now I'm in a software. I'm a techie in the US on the verge of getting my citizenship. Actually not, I don't know with Mr. Trump whether he'll get his citizenship. I don't know what it is that you saw on my face that particular morning where there was chaos and shouting and breaking and hitting at home. At the end of the class, you quietly called me out, and I still remember you did not do me the indignity of calling me out in front of everyone. You waited till everyone had gone and said, "Child, you look a little out of sorts. Is anything the matter?" And I told you what had transpired that morning and what has been transpiring all these days. And it's not that you did anything great. You just said it must have been so difficult to keep all this inside of you. I'm so happy that you told me, and if there's anything conceivably I could do, I'd be happy to do so. And teacher, I have never ever forgotten that act of kindness. You know, he's coming back after 25 years for 2 minutes of a first response that changed the trajectory of his life, which might otherwise have proceeded to the whole issue of a downward spiral, which brings me to the whole parenting context that someone alluded to yesterday, and Sachin referred to it in the passing. And if you take student life and examinations in academia as a context of distress, and then that of suicidality, and how an ecosystem deals with this, it sort of reminds me of a newspaper middle I wrote once where I said, "Rejoice, it is examination time." Funny, isn't it? No one ever thought of examinations as a joyous experience because there's always a sense of doom, disaster, and finality around it. Whereas examination should actually be a celebration of learning. But it never is because outcome, result, and success is prioritized over effort and process. And this is the point that, Sachin was also making. I recall telling a friend of mine who's the director of 6 schools, he's a classmate of mine from school. I said, यार तू एग्जामिनेशन मेला क्यों नहीं करता? हाँ, एक फील्ड को भाड़े पे ले ले और वहाँ स्टॉल्स होंगी, भूगोल का स्टॉल, इतिहास का स्टॉल, ओपन बुक, and as teachers enter, as students enter, teachers will throw rose water on them, and he says, तू भी मजाक करता है यार, my admin will never allow me to. The point is, अभिभावक का संतान के साथ और अध्यापक का छात्र के साथ रिश्ता जो है, उसकी संस्कृति है आदेश, उपदेश और अपेक्षा. वार्तालाप की संस्कृति नहीं है. There is no culture of conversations. It is instruction, expectation, control, and obedience. So if you're looking at a change in an ecosystem, we would have to look at addressing some of these fundamental issues in addition to some of the systemic things that Aruna referred to in her keynote today. And I will be alluding to some major points that Aruna made as well. The fourth point, I'm making only 6 points. The fourth point I want to make pertains to the digital ecosystem that Sachin alluded to, the non-suicidal self-injury that Teena referred to, and the business of substance use as a means to mitigate the kind of distress that you feel. I in fact, remember a 14-year-old client of mine, parents had divorced, mother migrated, father had alcohol issues, she was poorly supervised, she was multiply abused by relatives and known people to the family. She came with 500 cuts on her body when I saw her. Now, to me, friends, this was an autobiography written in a strange heliographic on a parchment made of her skin. This was a freaking story. Now, what do people usually say? Why are you doing this? When will this stop? What is the matter? Talk to me. And of course, the most convenient thing, emerging emotionally unstable personality disorder, or worse still, borderline personality. It's a horrible diagnosis to give, particularly to women who have undergone trauma. It's a very convenient diagnosis to give because it then absolves you of all obligation and responsibility to struggle with the complexities of that person's lives. All I did was took the story, and there were single cuts on a given occasion, and on another occasion there would be multiple cuts. I took the story cut by cut over the entire epoch from the time that she started cutting. She's still alive. She's all of 35 or 36 now. She's a great animal expert. She smokes weed. She's been in trouble with the police. So she's still messed up, but she's alive and doing stuff. And that brings me to the whole drug issue and related to the whole issue of shame, which we spoke about. The antidote to shame, we said, is belonging, its presence, its pride, its achievement, but it's also humor. And how can we regain humor? So, my response, therefore, to the drug issue is listen, if you have not done communism in cannabis by the time you're 21, you're stupid. If you continue to do it after you're 35, you're even more stupid. So, at some point of time, you need to go through life leaving no turn unstoned. Sorry? The,
You got a lot of stones to.
my, my last 2 points, and I'm coming to an issue which actually Lorraine raised in the morning, and an issue that Teena also alluded to when we were having breakfast together. This whole issue of the word of suicide in an ecosystem, and Teena told me that she was first invited to a school to give a talk, then the principal said, don't use the word suicide. And Lorraine told me the same thing, that there is, don't refer to this as a word. So if you have to build an ecosystem, and if there is such apprehension about the semantic and the dialectic and the language, we can change the language. So we can create a narrative which is not student mental health or suicide prevention. It's not suicide prevention, it's student mental. No, don't use the word mental. Okay, student health. No, don't use the word health because so well-being. So so how do we do this work essentially with school heads to set up this ecosystem? And that brings me to the last point and link it with Aruna's. Aruna said two things. One is she said, even if you do something with 5 people, it's a valid start. But remember what she also said. Whatever you do has to come up to scale and has to be institutionalized. So suicide prevention is not giving one lecture. And how do you institutionalize this? Is that you need to first work with an institution's conviction at a factual level and at an ideological level. Children don't have mental health issues. This is not the school's obligation. So the question we start is essentially in an ecosystem to work with the system itself. And one of the questions I often ask teachers in school is, why did you become a teacher? Is it because you love teaching, or is it because you love the subject? And I tell them it's a trick question. Why did you become a teacher? Is it because you love teaching, or is it because you love the subject? It's a trick question. The answer is I became a teacher because I love children. And if you then ask yourself, what is the purpose of education? And I'm talking about school as an ecosystem. And people may say literacy, numeracy, career, livelihood, and all of that. I have no argument with all that BS. But the true purpose of education is the development of an egalitarian personhood. It is the development of a socially responsive and responsible citizen, and it's the development of an identity that is imbued with aesthetic sensibility about art, music, theater, life, nature, relationships, emotions. That's what education is. And when you do that, then the teacher's comfort level increases, and then we can get into an ecosystem of the nature that I'm trying to build using this paradigm of a 4-part approach where one, I work with the counseling team itself to enable their comfort levels at two components or two contexts. One is technical inputs, and the other essentially is clinical mentoring for tough cases or cases which are exceedingly complex. And the third, which many people have alluded to, including Nairuti, about what happens to the therapist's self and how do you navigate that. The reconciliation, friends, I made very early in my career because the choice of getting into medicine, mental health, and child was a deliberate and conscious choice. And when people ask me, do you enjoy your work? I don't know what to answer, because how do you tell someone कि क्या मत suicide का case देखा यार, मजा आ गया, you know? Because the truth is, there are many days when you listen to the human predicament, all you feel like doing is going home, digging a hole and crawling into it. The work is fulfilling. I do not have the luxury to meta-process what I'm feeling. And to all young professionals, I'm saying this, there will be challenges. And I've sent Sandy a very nice interview that one of my scholars, Harkishan Mamtani, has done with Avinash D'Souza in Bombay. It's on suicidality. Avinash said a very good thing. He said, yaar, surgery mein log marte hain na table pe. Psychiatry practice में attempts होंगी. This is part of the reality of the occupation that you have to deal with. So we build an ecosystem based on strengthening this one-on-one counselor-scholar interaction, but we also strengthen it by developing large campus-wide initiatives where we look at identity and well-being and the whole premise of inclusion. You know what Anil and Vaidehi said here, and I was sharing with some of my friends back there when I showed them the Honorable Supreme Court's order, which is in the Honorable Supreme Court, Shekhar, Seshadri and others versus Mukesh Kaushal and others, being the first mental health professional to file an affidavit in the Honorable Supreme Court for decriminalization of 377 then. The predicament in a campus of people who are struggling with their identities, and ultimately whether it is a cisgender lesbian or gay person or a trans person struggling with coming out or being outed, or whether it is a cisgender heterosexual person who's been abused or who's been smoking weed, whatever it may be, these all feed into the notion of a fragmented identity. And in order to give a wholesome frame of reference to the development of an identity that, despite the trials and tribulations and vicissitudes that individual may have gone through in that journey, is by creating spaces where we talk about these things. So it is not about anyone identifying himself or herself necessarily or coming out, but we create spaces where the dialogue is open, and then the campus gets conscientized, and the campus becomes compassionate. And in the spirit of what Irina shared, and I believe Sachin also comes from a Gabor Mate frame of reference, that the only thing that will conscientize a campus is compassion. And do we really have compassionate campuses that recognize that our true purpose is only and only in sustaining the identity of your scholars? All the rest is by the way. Because no matter what you teach and what you try, people do well in their lives. So it's not about how well you taught your subject. It's how well you supported the identity of that individual. So like I said, we are developing the framework of this, what a robust and campus-wide well-being program will look like. And as we go in refining and adding, perhaps when Sandy organizes the next conference on institutions and suicidality, maybe Nairuti and I can come back and do a special session on a methodology and a modality of how this is done.
Thank you, Dr. Shekhar, for that. And like you rightly pointed out, I think we have a need for having a focused work with institutions and suicidality, because we have a lot of young people at one time available to us to work with in one particular campus. And I think systems like this are going to help us to have well-being programs across several layers. Lorraine, bringing you in, I would just like to ask you, because with the PEP, I think the work is mainly with schools that you are doing. What are young people telling us about what support they need from the community?
Thanks, Jaya. Guilt trip you went on was, where have we failed as professionals? Why didn't this child come to us? And that is the foundational work of the Peer Educator program. Children, adolescents reveal their distress to their peers, not to adults. We recognize that, and that is why we work with them. Secondly, the age of suicide, the statistics, 18 to 30 is the highest demographic in India. So we work with 11 to 18-year-olds to strengthen them. Our main focus is building them with emotional resilience, coping, helping them improve their strength of identity, knowing who they are, so that they resist the pressures when they come on. They're able to stand up for themselves. Children come back to us time after time because we give them, in our work, we give them one-on-one spaces. I have a 13-year-old who starts crying at the beginning of the session. 45 minutes, she's still sobbing helplessly. I take her out while the team is working with somebody else. It takes another half an hour for her to stop crying. That night, she was planning to jump off a terrace of her third-floor building. Why? The academic pressure. Single parent, yes. So the mother's constantly angry with her. She doesn't understand why she's the object of the mother's anger. But she says, even if I get 90 and I'm getting 90, she just wants to be angry with me. She wants me to get 95. I think it's just better I die. I get out of her life. Then she has nothing to be angry with. She's internalized that. I just wonder, how does a mother not see the pain in her child's eyes? How do we sensitize parents? Without a child speaking to you, can you see their pain? We do work with parents. We work in parent workshops, telling them what our program is all about, offering them support. I have a parent who says, I don't understand why my child is misbehaving. I'm giving them everything. I'm visiting this parent's house with the principal at her invitation. And she says, Lorraine, I don't understand. I said, just hang on. I'll ask a couple of questions along the way. And as we were driving with the parents, it was a long journey. So I asked the parents, I said, what do you do? And they said, we are traders. We're in so-and-so community, we are traders. Super. So you have these two daughters. Do you give them everything that they want? Yes, we've never said no to anything. I just told the principal, you have your answer there. Parents don't have the time. So they're giving them everything else materialistically, that PlayStation, but they're not giving their time. So we need to build that kind of support system where parents do not monetize the support they're giving the children. They do not objectivize it. They need to just simply be with them. Can we do that? Can we have no device time? Can we have family events that don't focus on movies? Oh, we go for movies every week. Once a week, we're together going for movies. Super. Did you gather around that board game for 1 hour? Did you talk to your kid over dinner? Or was it TV dinner? We ask these questions in our parent support. We also have teachers' workshops where we try to sensitize teachers, but we need teachers to understand that beyond the problems they're seeing, there are other deeper emotional levels that are impacting the child's performance. To give you a small example of what happened, I walked into a school for a class, for a session with the kids. I needed to use a room to freshen up, so I walked into the admin section to use the washroom there. When I come out, the principal's in a flap. This girl, this girl, this girl. I said, what's wrong? She's sitting out there. This child was sitting there, blank, eyes staring. Something told me something was drastically wrong. She's having a fit, the principal said. I said, no, she's not. Can you give me time with her? Sat with the child. She was actually dissociative. She said, I'm seeing blood everywhere. I said, where's the blood? Talk to me, child. My parents are covered in blood. This has been happening in the classroom. I recognized that it was a serious crisis that she was having. I asked the principal, to keep her out of the classroom for that day. Asked for the school counselor to escalate, because we are not allowed to escalate directly, to a psychotherapist. Gave her the referral of a child psychiatrist who had psychotherapists on his team. The child is in therapy. Therefore, because I had a strong relationship with that principal through years of working in that school through the PEP, I said, the next academic orientation, I'd like a 4-hour workshop with your teachers to bring them all the mental health aspects that are challenging these children's performance in the classroom. The teachers messaged me one by one, Lorraine, 3 hours, please. We went to 5. Not one of them walked out. We need this to happen in institutions. We need total alignment with mental health professionals. Right now, we are driving an initiative with Akanksha. Sumit is here. He used to work with them. Akanksha is another foundation, an NGO that works with underprivileged children. We're just working to a collaboration with the teachers so that they are trained in crisis management, in suicide identification of suicide risk, and intervention. We will be working with the teachers on this. We hope then that these teachers will carry the work out in others. We need active partnerships. The last thing, the major challenge that we face, and I'm talking to all funders in this room, academics, we have programs. We have the peer educator program. You know what the funders tell us? Show us the numbers. Show us the number of students you have reached. It becomes such a challenge. We need funders to ask us, show us the numbers pre-intervention and post-intervention, because we have that data. We do pre-surveys, we do post-surveys. We give it back to the schools. Post-COVID, our system got disrupted, but we've done that. Those are the numbers we want to see. We don't want to see that we've reached 1,000 children. We want to see that we've reached 100 children where they have grown in emotional strength and resilience from 30 to 60. Because we know that if we enable these children, they will go out and touch the lives of their peers. This is the work we need to do. This is the cooperation we need from school boards. This is the cooperation we need from funders. We have a beautiful story. We were doing a parents' workshop. We did one pre the academic year. We did one post the academic year. There was this young mother sitting there. When will the session start? When will the session start? It started. She said, I'd like to be the first before you even talk about anything, because I need to rush off from here. And then she spoke. She was not fluent. She spoke in Marathi. And she said, my husband is in hospital. He's had an accident. The surgeon is coming to visit to tell us what kind of surgery he needs. There's no one with him, but I'm here because I want to tell all the parents here, let your children go through this process with connecting. Let them be strengthened. My 13-year-old was the most playful, but somehow through these sessions with you, I found her becoming more responsive. She comes, she asks me, Mama, what's happening with you? And right now, while I'm here, She's not in school today. She's looking after her little sister. And she says, Mama, you go, don't worry. You go look after Papa. I'll take over for today. She says, I have watched the transformation happen. I've watched her become so caring. I would love if in our peer educator program and all other academic programs that we could have just one term of teaching compassion and support. That would be the job done in every school and every academic institution. We would build better peer support. Jaya, does that answer you?
It's evident the amount of involvement and passion you have with the work that you're doing through Connecting, and I think Connecting has done a wonderful job over the last 20 years. I don't know, do we have time for questions? Because otherwise I can go for a closing round. Yeah. No? No? 10 minutes? Should I go in for a closing round then?
10 minutes. No, we have 10 minutes.
We have 10 minutes for a question?
Yeah, I don't have a question, I just have a reflection. As a young person who is working in suicide prevention, मुझे ये जब भी मैं कहीं पे भी जाती थी सुसाइड प्रिवेंशन ट्रेनिंग करने या उसके बारे में बात करने, तो वही बोलते थे यू आर टू यंग टू टॉक अबाउट इट. लेकिन मैं डी एडिक्शन सेंटर, सेंट्रल जेल, चिल्ड्रन इन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट विथ लॉ, मैं सब जगह जा पाई क्योंकि लोगों ने मुझे एनकरेज और सपोर्ट किया. ये नहीं बोल और सुना मैं क्या सोचती हूँ, मुझे क्या लगता है, क्योंकि मुझे लगता है कि अगर हमें इम्पॉर्टेंस ही नहीं दी जाएगी हमारे थॉट्स को, हमारे पर्सपेक्टिव को, यूथ पर्सपेक्टिव को, तो फिर अगर कोई बड़ा में से बहुत एज में बड़ा वो कहते हैं ना पीयर के उससे ही, तो मुझे लगता है अगर हमें केवल एक तो सपोर्ट, एनकरेजमेंट, ट्रेनिंग्स दी जाए तो हम बहुत मतलब कुछ कर सकते हैं, है ना. लेकिन जजमेंट नहीं की जाए कि आपकी शादी हो गई कि नहीं हुई, आप पढ़ाई ये वो, तो मुझे वो चीज़ एक चीज़ याद आई.
हमसे अक्सर ये सवाल पूछा जाता, आपके बच्चे हैं? मैंने कहा नहीं. फिर आपको चाइल्ड साइकियाट्री क्या मालूम है?
हाँ.
तो नहीं, जो मुद्दा आपने, आप बैठिए ना, मुद्दा जो आपने उठाया, लोरेन का जो काम चल रहा है और जिस बात का जया ने भी जिक्र किया और जिस इकोसिस्टम की है बात कर रहे हैं, उसमें पीयर मीडिएटेड इंटरैक्शंस एंड पीयर सपोर्ट ये एक बहुत ही अहम हिस्सा है इस प्रक्रिया का. द पीयर्स आर ऑल्सो trained to recognize levels of severity. जहाँ आपको लग रहा है कि कोई परिस्थिति जो है वो बहुत ही जटिल है या उसकी मात्रा बहुत तीव्र है, then we have a process called triage. So then you escalate it to the counselor. If the counselor feels that this is clinical, it is really complex, she will escalate it to your network of clinicians and psychiatrists. So this is how an ecosystem is built. So we always look at teachers on the one hand, not the counselors of the school, teachers of the school, teachers of the college, and pupils, peers, as a first level to really create an ecosystem of compassion and responsivity. तो ये होता है तरीका. जी, बस यही ईश्वर से प्रार्थना कीजिए कि मुझे लंबी उम्र दे. मैं 70 साल का हूँ. अच्छा, कृपा बरसेगी. रेणु जी, आपके लिए एक चीज मैं कहना चाहता था कि जो डेमोग्राफिक से निकल चुके हैं उनके लिए क्या करें, बैंगलोर आ जाइए, गमीज आर अवेलेबल वेरी फ्रीली. अच्छा,
नॉर्मल भांग बनाएंगे.
अच्छा, नॉर्मल भांग बनाएंगे. अच्छा, ठीक है, ठीक है. जय काशी.
जय महाकाल.
Hello. Hi. So I'm very new to this world. It's been like 3 years, and thanks to Connecting that I'm here in front of you people. I've been working, I've worked alone for a couple of years with the students, building resilience. To cut it short, I have a couple of questions. I do not have
How much is a couple? 3 each.
The thing is, I do not have a lot of sample size, but I've met 13 students where I felt that the kids have become emotionally more intelligent as compared to parents. So I wanted to just clarify.
इसका जवाब सचिन दी देंगे.
Okay.
अगला question.
Second is like कि what I had again noticed was like, so over the years in every generation, every parents, they are like कि जो बाप माँ को easily नहीं मिला, the kids will get it. Is convenience killing the resilience among the kids? This is my second thing. And third thing is like, which again I have, the mental health conditions is actually very bad when you come down to UP. I belong from that part of the nation, UP, Jharkhand, and even West Bengal and Bihar.
Johar Jharkhand.
Johar Jharkhand. So it's like they say it takes the whole society to raise a human kid. But when you go down to UP, Bihar, the Gaon Dehat, right? It's like I feel like the internet is raising the kids. The parents are.
इसका जवाब भी सचिन दी देंगे.
So. Thank you.
So, यहाँ पे the question becoming, okay, children are becoming more emotionally intelligent than their folks, and parents को ये है कि हमारे साथ जो हुआ है, हमें जो कमी रह गई थी, हमें उनको पूरा करना है. तो आपका दूसरा सवाल था कि कन्वीनियंस की वजह से क्या इमोशनल रेजिलियंस कम हो रहा है. तो ये दोनों क्वेश्चन ऑलमोस्ट पैराडॉक्सिकल लग रहे हैं कि आपने बता रहे हो कि एक तरीके से बच्चों में या स्टूडेंट्स में या यंग पर्सन्स में इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस बढ़ रहा है, एटलीस्ट बोल रहे हैं कि आप पेरेंट्स के मुकाबले, एंड देन कन्वीनियंस की वजह से हो रहा है. एंड आपका थर्ड जो क्वेश्चन था वही आंसर था कि ये जो डिजिटल जो मोबाइल फ़ोन उनको बड़ा कर रहे हैं. तो ये आपका आंसर ये इस तरह नहीं है कि मोबाइल फ़ोन की वजह से है, जिनको बड़ा करना है वो नहीं कर रहे हैं, है ना. कि आप यहाँ पे पेरेंट्स हैं, तो अभी देखो मैं जब बड़ा हो रहा था, मुझसे शायद थोड़ा पहले, हम चंदा मामा दिखा के सुलाते थे, खिलाते थे बच्चों को, ठीक है ना. क्योंकि अभी मैं ये सुन के परेशान हो गया हूँ कि पेरेंट्स या जो भी ओल्डर हैं वो सीधे बच्चों पे बिल फाड़ देते हैं ना. बहुत इजी काम है. क्यों? वो मोबाइल फ़ोन है, मोबाइल फ़ोन पे ही रहता है, बस है वो है. या आप उसको आपने कैसे देखा? आपने भी मोबाइल फ़ोन के थ्रू ही देखे हो, राइट. They are saying that children do not have food if we don't show the mobile phone. ये आप लोगों ने सबने सुना है ना, ठीक है. तो ये 5 साल पहले तब क्या सुनाई देता था मालूम? मेरा बच्चा ना ऐसे ऐसे करके मोबाइल फोन करता है, देखो कितना स्मार्ट है. 2 साल का ही है बट ऐसे ऐसे करता है, खुद ही म्यूजिक प्लेयर चालू करता है. तो आपने उसी में उसको प्राइड दिया, आपने उसे वैलिडेशन दी है कि आपने कितना अच्छा कर रहे हो. आपने उसे अपने जीवन का रौनक बना दिया. देखो मेरा गर्व है ये. क्यों? मोबाइल फोन के साथ खेल रहा है. और आज आप आराम से भूल गए हो कि ये आप ही की देन है. आपको बच्चे मरने हैं तो ठीक है, अभी आप पेरेंट्स का भी मैं हर्ट नहीं करूं, और फिर बच्चों को फिर मैं कैसे संभालूं. बच्चे तो बच्चे हैं, पेरेंट्स को आप डिसाइड करना है आपको क्या करना है ना. अभी आपने ये पेरेंट्स का ईगो हर्ट करने के लिए नहीं, पेरेंट्स को सच्चाई कौन बताएगा. हम ये सब बोल रहे हैं कलयुग आ गया है ना. कलयुग का मतलब क्या है? आपका ये जो डिजिटल दुनिया है, आपके बच्चों को ये डिजिटल दुनिया में प्रेजेंस चाहिए कि नहीं चाहिए आगे उनके फ्यूचर के लिए? डू दे नीड टू हैव अ डिजिटल प्रेजेंस? द आंसर इज यस. ये कलयुग है. आप यहां पे सतयुग के फॉर्मूलाज ना यूज करें, है ना. आपने ये समझना है कि युग बदल गया है और आप अभी भी उस जमाने का चंदा मामा ढूंढ रहे हो. ये जब तक आप नहीं रोकेंगे, जब तक हम सच नहीं बोलेंगे. ये कम्युनिकेशन का सबसे पहला, देखो मैं 4 पॉलिसीज मानता हूं. एक है ऑनेस्टी, कि आप जो बोल रहे हो सच बोलो. सच बोलो माने मेरा ओपिनियन है तो मैं वो सच नहीं, वो ओपिनियन है, ओपिनियन के बारे में नहीं बात कर रहे हम. जो बात है वो बोले. आपको नेक्स्ट पार्ट है, आपको कंपैशन दिखाना है. जब कोई सच में अपना दर्द बता रहा है, आप उसके स्टोरी को नहीं, उसके दर्द को वैलिडेट कर रहे हैं कि ये दर्द मुझे दिख रहा है। ये विटनेसिंग है कि आप एक इंसान को, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है कि मैं जब दर्द में हूं किसी और को इसका खबर हो, अब बेयर विटनेस चाहिए होता है, राइट। देन जो उसके थॉट्स हैं, जो उसके बिलीव्स है, जो उसका इंटरनल मैप है, कोई उसे समझे, ना कि उसे बताए, कोई समझे कि यार मेरा ऐसा चल रहा है, मेरा ओपिनियन उससे बहुत अलग होगा, बट तेरा ये ऐसे कैसे आया करके एक इंटरेस्ट है क्या, उसके लिए चाहिए जिज्ञासा, क्यूरियोसिटी चाहिए आपको। और ये चौथा है कि जो मिले उसके, आपने उसके रूट को समझा, उसके तरीके को समझा, उसके मैप को समझा, और उसके बाद जो आपको इंसान दिखाई दिया है उसे एक्सेप्टेंस करें, उसे उसके लिए जगह बनाए कि भाई तेरे लिए भी जगह है। अभी आपने घर में बच्चे पाल रखे हैं, पाल रहा कोई नहीं है, बच्चे रखे हैं, है ना। आप फादर हो तो मैंने 12 घंटे मैं काम करूंगा, काम नहीं, बकैती होती है ज्यादा, 7 घंटे शायद आपका कुछ काम हो, उसके बाद आप क्लॉक आउट सेंटर के बाहर खड़े रहते हो, क्यों, घर में नहीं जाना है क्योंकि बीवी बोलेगी कुछ कुछ। ये सब चीजें मैं क्यों बोल रहा हूं पता है, क्योंकि ये हमारे नॉर्मल कॉन्वर्सेशंस में ये सवाल आते हैं, आपको ये लेवल पे जाना पड़ेगा उनसे। हम साइकोलॉजिकल थियरीज के ऊपर नहीं बात कर सकते, आप लेमन से बात कर रहे हो, है ना। आपको उनके लाइफ में झांकना पड़ेगा कि भैया क्या हो रहा है, आप इसे क्या बुला रहे हो। नहीं तो फिर हम ये थियोरेटिकल लेवल पे बात करेंगे तो मेजर इशू इज मोबाइल फोन्स एंड एडिक्शन एंड सुइसाइड। नहीं, ये नहीं है। सुइसाइड इज अ सिम्टम। सिम्टम का मतलब मैं छींकता हूं ना, वो कोल्ड का सिम्टम है। हम छींकना रोकने देख रहे हैं, कोल्ड पे कोई ध्यान नहीं दे रहा, समझ रहे हैं। तो ये जब तक हम ईगो ब्रेक होने के डर से या कुछ और चीज से अगर आप सच बोलना बंद करेंगे तो यही छींक रोकने का प्रोग्राम, अभियान हमारा जारी रहेगा, है ना।
Putting that out, yeah. And I think we'll conclude the session. I think Dr. Teena has something to add to what has happened, and with that, we'll end the questions.
So the question I wanted to ask is, I mean, बच्चे इमोशनली पेरेंट्स से मैच्योर क्यों है? ये भी एक सवाल है जो हमें बच्चों से सीखनी चाहिए, क्योंकि सब पेरेंट्स बनने के लिए तैयार नहीं थे, और हमारे समाज में ऐसे बहुत परिवार है जहाँ पर पेरेंट्स फंक्शनल नहीं है, बच्चे घर चलाते हैं, तो फिर वो बच्चे क्यों रहेंगे, वो तो कब के बड़े हो चुके हैं, तो वो पेरेंट्स से आगे है। तो आई वर्क इन दिस एरिया कॉल्ड डिसफंक्शनल फैमिली। जब मैंने इसका सपोर्ट ग्रुप शुरू किया था, इस सपोर्ट ग्रुप में अडल्ट्स आते हैं जो 50 के हैं, 40 के हैं, 30 के हैं, 18 के भी है, जिन्होंने अपना घर संभाला है 8 साल के, 10 साल की उम्र से, क्योंकि पेरेंट्स ड्रग एडिक्ट्स थे। हम लोग जो डिस्कस कर रहे हैं, हमारा पर्सपेक्टिव ये है कि पेरेंट्स सही है, बच्चे गलत है, हमें उनको हमेशा सिखाना चाहिए। लेकिन काफ़ी जगहों पे हम पेरेंट्स कभी थे नहीं, हम शायद पार्टनर के लॉस से या पेरेंट के लॉस से या एक और बच्चे के लॉस से या नौकरी के लॉस से, जब हम अपना प्रॉब्लम्स डील कर रहे थे, ये बच्चे अपने आप बड़े हो गए और उनको मिल गई एक्सेस बड़े टेबल पे आके बैठ के पेरेंट्स की तरह बात करने का। और एक दिन अचानक आप उनको बोलते हो मैं तेरा माँ हूँ, बाप हूँ, मुझे इज्जत दो, तो ये बच्चा यही सवाल करेगा ना, जब इतना साल मैं सब कुछ अपने आप चला रही थी तब तो देखे नहीं आप लोगों को, अब अचानक आपको याद आ गया आप हमारे माँ बाप हो। दिस इज़ अ वेरी सीरियस प्रॉब्लम। और अगर ये चीज़ पे हम बात करें, बोलेंगे ये हमारे संस्कार में नहीं है, ये वेस्टर्न फिलॉसफी है, डिसफंक्शनल फैमिली तो होता नहीं है, सारे परिवार में कुछ ना कुछ होता रहता है और बच्चे मदद करते हैं, शेयर्ड लेबर है, इसका ये मतलब नहीं कि माँ बाप नहीं रहेंगे। सो ये पर्सपेक्टिव भी, जस्ट लाइक डॉक्टर शेषाद्री सेड, स्कूल्स, व्हाई डू वी वांट टू बी अ टीचर, सेम क्वेश्चन, हम माँ बाप क्यों बने थे? और बहुत लोगों का जवाब यही होगा, एक्चुअली मुझे बनना नहीं था, मुझे बोला गया था।
बिजनेस इन्वेस्टमेंट
सबको होता है, पड़ोसी को भी है, रिश्तेदारों में भी है, सब पूछेंगे। इसीलिए आई वॉजंट रेडी टू बी अ पेरेंट एंड वी हैव टू एक्सेप्ट इट। आई लाइक्ड व्हेन आइरीना सेड विद द ओल्डर चाइल्ड शी नोज द डिफरेंस। हम में से कितने लोग ऐसे बोल सकते हैं, पहले बच्चे के साथ मैंने बहुत गलतियाँ की है, उसका नतीजा बच्चे में मैं देख पा रही हूँ। वी डोंट वॉन्ट टू से दैट। हम पेरेंट्स बहुत गलतियाँ करते हैं। इफ़ वी कैन एक्सेप्ट दैट एंड रेस्पेक्ट देम, and be curious. I think आधी problems वही solve हो जाती है.
Jaya.
Thank you for that. I can see how close this is to everyone's heart. And I would, Lorraine, if you're okay, because we're running out of time.
I'll just recap.
Yeah.
You asked me, what does the children want? They want time with their parents. They want understanding. They want presence. They don't want the things you can buy. They can do without it. Give them yourself.
And
That's
I must take this time to thank all the panelists. I would agree with, I think all of you would agree with me. There's a lot of food for thought that has come out of this discussion. There are a lot of difficult questions which we are going to go back home and ask ourselves, or even now. And like Lorraine rightly pointed out, I'm glad we had a younger voice that finally also spoke up into our panel, which we said was listening to youth. And there's just one thing, it's evident that what they're asking for is connection, what they're asking for is compassion. And if we can create those spaces where young people feel safe to speak, I'm sure we are going to create communities where young people choose to live. So I would like to end with that, and thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you. I would now request Mridula to please come on stage and facilitate the panelists. Just one by one. I would request the delegates to kindly stop. There are a few important announcements for all of you. Please wait. Weber, just close the doors.